order the Selma City Council special meeting, September 27th, 2019, 6 p.m. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Avalos?
Here.
Councilmember Guerra?
Here.
Councilmember Trujillo?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco?
Here.
Mayor Robertson?
Here. Potential conflicts of interest. Any council member has a potential conflict of interest may announce the item now and recuse themselves from discussing or voting on the matter. Oral communications. During public comments, if you wish to address the City Council, under Government Code Section 54954.3a, you may only address the City Council concerning any item that has been described in the notice for the special meeting. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to come forward for oral communications tonight? Okay, with that, we'll move on to our regular items tonight. I would like to advance item 2 of the regular business to the first item being considered tonight, because we have new information from City Attorney Costanzo regarding districting into 4 districts with the mayor at large being elected. This will influence the discussion of the public hearing on the 5 districting, and therefore we are moving item 2 of the regular business up as a result. So the summary of that is discussion and direction regarding amending resolution number 2019-39R, a resolution declaring the City of Selma's intent to transition from at-large to by-district council member elections pursuant to Election Code Section 10010 to 4 districts and a mayor at large pursuant to Government Code Section 34886.
Let me step down to the podium, Mayor. That way I think I can address the council more effectively.
Okay.
Mayor, members of the council, I suspect that someone will question the motivation behind this, so let me start with that. The motivation is purely my own, and all I am doing is attempting to conform myself to the rules of professional conduct. You hired an attorney while you were in the midst of a proceeding, and when that occurs, my obligation is to look at what you have done, where you're at, how you got here, and whether or not you made any missteps along the way. And I did discover that it appears, at least from the oral exchange over 2 meetings, that the council has been operating under a misapprehension of what the law is. If I make that discovery, I'm required by our ethical rules to call that out and to bring that to your attention. And if there's time to do so, to let you know what the error is and how to correct it. And in this case, your error essentially led you to misconstrue one of the options that is available to you under the law. So let me take you back to July 1st. Doug Johnson was here from NDC, and at the end of his presentation, he mentioned that, number 1, no city has successfully defended a Voting Rights Act suit. And number 2, I think because the question was raised, that he had been involved in a couple of cases, I believe, where the issue of whether or not having a mayor at large was an issue in one of those cases. So Raina, will you bring up that code section? This is Government Code Section 34886. And the first thing I want you to notice about that is the effective date, January 1, 2017. he said, with respect to the two cases he was involved in where the mayor at large was at issue, that the court essentially let it go and said, took a we'll see what happens approach toward that, and really didn't come to any decision. And those were both accurate statements. But each of those cases was filed before January 1, 2017. Before that date, there were cities out there that were being challenged under the Voting Rights Act for having a mayor-at-large election system, even though they had divided into districts with respect to every other council seat. So those cities went to the League of Cities, and the League of Cities went to the legislature and got this passed. And it became effective on January 1, 2017, at which point those cases that were pending against those cities that Mr. Johnson mentioned became moot. When a case becomes moot, the court is required to dismiss the case. That's what happened in those cases. If you were to try to file one of those cases now, it wouldn't work because you have this statute which forecloses anyone from filing a Voting Rights Act suit or serving the infamous $30,000 letter based on the fact that you have districted and retained the mayor-at-large selection system. And the way it does that is it uses magic words. It says, notwithstanding section 34871 or any other law. What that means is that this section applies without regard to any law, including the Voting Rights Act. And it expressly allows you to adopt an ordinance which divides the city into 4 districts and has a at-large elected mayor, as long as you put in your ordinance that you are doing this in furtherance of the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act.
The ordinance itself has to include that language.
The ordinance itself has to include that language, yes. Going back to July 1st, it was obvious to me that Councilman Trujillo was listening very carefully to Mr. Johnson because somebody brought up whether or not you could go into districts and retain an at-large elected mayor. And Councilman Trujillo said he was concerned about that, and he said, doesn't that leave us open to exposure to either getting the $30,000 letter or getting sued under the Voting Rights Act? And the answer he got was he was absolutely right. That retaining a mayor at large and districting into 4 districts would leave you subject to suit or receiving a demand letter under the Voting Rights Act. That is incorrect. This statute fully insulates you from those consequences. To get to where I'm telling you this leads, you actually have to read section 34886 in conjunction with section 34871. Section 34871 basically speaks in terms of placing on the ballot a measure to have a elected mayor. And it lists several ways in which you can do that in subdivisions A and C, which are mentioned there in section 34886. So this says, notwithstanding section 34871, which requires a measure to be placed on the ballot, you can adopt an ordinance to have a mayor elected at large. And subdivision C is the applicable section for your city, and it says that one of the ways in which you can have the elected mayor is to divide into 4 districts with an elected mayor at large. So that this section says you can do that by ordinance, and going to the voters for approval is not necessary so long as you make the declaration that you're doing so in furtherance of the Voting Rights Act. So fast forward to July 15th. That's the date on which you adopted your resolution of intention to form districts as opposed to at-large elections. And that resolution passed unanimously. I don't know why, because there was no discussion about it on the record. But there was the agenda item that followed that was the question of whether you should place a measure on the ballot to have an at-large elected mayor. And back to Councilman Trujillo. Councilman Trujillo was opposed to that, and he stated his reasons for his opposition and his reasons for his no vote. Those reasons were, number one, doing that would leave Selma exposed to liability under the Voting Rights Act or receipt of the demand letter. Number two, that the taxpayers shouldn't have to spend money to put that on the ballot. And number three, that persons lacking financial wherewithal would find it difficult to mount an at-large campaign. So I don't know which one of those reasons tilted the scale for the councilman, but I do know that the first two reasons are not reasons. They're not valid reasons, because this statute here allows you to do that without any exposure under the Voting Rights Act, and it allows you to do it without putting it on the ballot. So I'm focused on Councilmember Trujillo simply because while the other two that voted against placing that measure on the ballot did state their reasons, I think he was more pointed about his reasons, and the other two did give other reasons in addition to the cost of placing it on the ballot and exposure under the Voting Rights Act, but the exposure under the Voting Rights Act really permeated the whole conversation. So just based on the discussion on the record, which is all I can go off of. I don't know what any particular council member's reasons were. For all I know, A vote can be made based on some undisclosed philosophical or political reason, and not the reasons that are stated on the record. I'm not saying you guys did that, but I'm making the assumption that your reasons for voting that down, the 3 council members that voted that down, that at least part of the reason was it had to go on the ballot, and at least part of the reason was the exposure to the Voting Rights Act that would linger if you retained a mayor at large and divided into 4 districts. So that's my obligation. When I see my client basing a decision apparently on reasons that are invalid and don't exist under the law, I have to bring that to your attention. And since you are at a point, and given the manner in which you went about this, it can still be corrected. I also have the obligation to tell you how you can do that. So I've passed around a schedule, basically. If you were to direct me to bring back to you an amended resolution of intention, what I would do is I would change the language in that resolution substantially and have it provide for a resolution of intention to form into 4 districts and have a mayor elected at large, and that you're doing that in furtherance of the Voting Rights Act. And I would also necessarily have to change the schedule, and my proposed schedule is what you would have before you. You adopted the resolution of intention before you received a letter, and you did that for a reason. You did it because you wanted to stop, foreclose anybody from serving you with that $30,000 letter or suing you under the Voting Rights Act. Because under Elections Code Section 110 basically says that you can't sue until you serve the letter, and you can't sue for 90 days after a entity has adopted the resolution of intention. So that creates that 90-day safe harbor. Your 90 days that you started when you adopted your original resolution of intention on July 15 will expire on October 13th. So it's 31 days in July and August. The code does not limit the number or sequence or successive resolutions of intention. You're allowed to do that. All it says is that you can issue one of those at any time before you receive a letter. And when you do, that kicks in that 90-day safe harbor provision. So if you were to direct me to bring back to you an amended resolution of intention, you could adopt that on October 7th without a public hearing. And that would give rise to another 90-day window during which you could adopt maps and ultimately an ordinance approving that map and setting the sequence of the elections. You all know how the process works. You have to have 2 public hearings before a map is released. You can actually use this public hearing as the first public hearing, excuse me, to adopt or to invite from the public suggestions as to the composition of the map. Or you can do it better by simply continuing the public hearing that is item 1 on your agenda to October 7th and have that follow the adoption of a amended resolution of intention, at which point we would solicit input from the public as to what our new map, which would be 4 districts instead of 5, should look like. So on the agenda I've got, or on my schedule, I have that as either September 27th or October 7th. Better to do it on October 7th than today. That way everybody's apprised in advance that what we're doing at that point is soliciting input as to what a map should look like. And
Tonight would just be an amended resolution.
just be an
of
amended
intention.
resolution.
Or we don't proceed and keep the resolution it is and just go with our 5 districts.
That's the other alternative, yes.
But you're speaking as if you're convincing that we need to switch, which is not the fact. We can just stay with our current resolution and just go with and picking our 5 districts.
I wasn't intending to speak as if you should switch.
Mm.
I'm simply giving you the steps as to how you would do that if you wanted to.
Okay.
Mr. Franco, I probably should speak first since he mentioned my name 3 to 4 times.
Are you-
Yes.
And I appreciate that.
Has he
And I'm-
concluded, though?
I
Has he-
don't know, but I have a question for you. You've mentioned my name 3 times, 4 times.
Yes.
You've done your due diligence. You've looked on, you've gone back and checked the meetings. I appreciate that. You started off this conversation by saying you're gonna step off this counter and step here, and you're gonna do your due diligence, because you stated that you're here because it's your obligation to inform the council that this is the way we should do it because it's wrong, that we were misinformed, correct?
No, not correct.
We're not misinformed?
I told you that the council appears to have operated under a misapprehension
So
of what the law does and does not allow.
So were we misinformed, or was it invalid? You used those words.
You were misinformed.
Okay, so, and because of that, we should go to mayor and 4 districts.
No,
So where did it
I'm
go
not,
from
I'm not
you?
saying,
where did-
I'm
where-
not saying that at all.
Where did it go from you doing your due diligence as our legal representative to now stating that we should do away from doing redistricting 5 districts to mayor at large and 4 districts? Because there was a cost. And the prior to that, before putting the carriage before the horse, the question should be, how did we get to a point that you're speaking on this behalf without a consensus of the council? Because it is costing the city money, isn't it? You doing your investigative work, or did you just do that because that's your?
No, I do not charge you, sir,
Or you're not
for-
charging us?
I
You're
don't
not
charge you
charging
for
us.
coming up to speed in order to do what I need to do. I looked at your videotapes.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at your previous staff reports.
Did you look
the
at the meeting?
resolutions.
Did you look at the meeting that you had where 3 council members shot down the fact that we did not want mayor at large?
I did.
He did, and it was, and
And
the reason was
July
And
because
you
there was
said- and you
a
stated-
confusion
you-
about
we-
the law.
you
We were
stated-
given the wrong
You stated that
advice.
maybe there was politically or misinformation that we got. Have you asked us? if
No,
we still
I
want-
didn't say
not
maybe
what
there
he's
was
saying.
misinformation you got. I said there was definitely misinformation you got.
Okay.
That misinformation consists
Mhm.
of information that it is, that it leaves you exposed to a Voting Rights Act claim
Mhm.
if you retain the mayor at large. I also told you that it was misinformation to tell you that you could only do that if you put it on the ballot. I'm not trying to speculate to what your reasons were. It
But you
doesn't,
stated-
it doesn't matter
But
to
you
me.
stated, but you did state it, correct?
I said what I said.
Well, it's on record. That's why I'm asking you because you stated my name 4 times and you had some innuendos as to
Eh,
why we came to a conclusion.
I
And I want to make sure that in the record, as a representative here, I want to know the basis as to how we ended up going from having districts to now we're going to mayor at large with 4 districts.
You're not going to merit large with 4 districts unless you direct that.
Unless we
I'm
pass
simply
an amended
pointing out-
resolution of intention.
I'm
And the
simply
reason we
pointing out
shot
that you
down
had
the
this
mayor at
option
large
available to
is
you.
because of a misapprehension
And
of the law.
you
No, that's not
considered
the
it.
Yep, that's true.
Not the only
And
reason.
part of the reason
And it would
you
cost more.
stated on the record, part of the reason everybody stated on the record that voted in favor of it was that it would leave you exposed to liability under the Voting Rights Act or receiving a letter. I'm simply telling you, that isn't the case because of this statute right here.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. It may very well be that your view that having somebody with the lack of financial wherewithal, being able to mount a campaign is not possible. That may very well be your reason. I don't know. All I'm saying is that it appears from the conversation that the other 2 invalid reasons factored into the equation. So when I see the
I'll accept
client,
that.
when I
I'll
see
accept that.
when I see a client considering things that the client need not consider, that aren't really considerations under the law, I have to call that out
I'm
to
gonna call
you.
that out.
I have to. And I didn't
Believe
try-
me, I've done my due diligence. I know the cities you work for. I know you're going to call it out. I understand that.
I
respect
have to.
that. I respect that.
And once I call it out, and I have to give you the option of reconsidering your decision and tell you how to do that. And that's quite simply all I'm doing.
Right.
And the only reason I'm picking on you, Councilman.
You're not picking on me. I don't believe me. I respect. I
No,
respect that.
the only reason I'm
You're good.
picking on you is because you were the one who asked the question that yielded the incorrect advice. And secondly, you were the one who was, I thought, most articulate about stating your reasons for your vote. That's all.
Okay, so is are you continuing your presentation? Because I don't think the gentleman's done. And then we can get into a discussion.
Well, I've told you how you can go about doing this if you want to do this.
Okay.
And I've told you that by doing it in this fashion, by adopting a changed resolution of intention before October 13th, you will start a new 90-day safe harbor in which you can complete that process. So I was proposing, if you want to go this route, that we have the first public hearing on the composition of the maps. And you've got several maps here already. It is not a difficult process, not a costly process, I'm told by NDC to simply take these maps, and if you take actually map P114, which is one two of the council members spoke of or proposed at our last meeting, if you take that map has all 4 districts touching District 2. And so all you would do to change that map is you would collapse District 2. It would disappear, and you would expand the lines of the other ones so that the 20% of Selma's population that is currently in District 2 would be divided up equally between the other 4, so you'd have 4 districts with 25% of the population in each district. Okay? Then you would have your second public hearing before publication of a map on October 31st. Then you would release the maps shortly thereafter, because I'm proposing the public hearing on the draft maps as November 4 and November 18, both regular meeting dates. Finally, you would reach December 2nd, and you would have the first reading and public hearing on the ordinance on November 18th, so that when you get to December 2nd, you would have simply second reading and adoption of the ordinance, assuming you had agreed on a map.
And that would be within the 90-day time frame.
That would be well within the 90-day time frame. I've shortened it because, as you know, the city basically goes dark after its first meeting in December, and we don't want to interfere with that long-standing process.
Okay, so there's a timeline within the 90 days to do this.
Right. You would also have to decide on the sequencing of this. And with a mayor, an elected mayor, you can have the mayor serve either a 2-year term or a 4-year term. And that's totally up to you. Since you have 3 seats up for election in 2020, you could either have 3 district elections in 2020, or you could have 2 district elections and then the mayor at large. Or you could have the mayor at large done in 2022, and there would be 1 district election. If you made the mayor a 2-year term mayor, you would have a situation where there would be 3 council people up for election every 2 years. So that is your option. And I'm only bringing it up because I don't know that it was properly considered. I don't know if the fact that having the mayor at large does not violate the Voting Rights Act and does not expose you to receiving one of those letters actually factored into the decision of anybody that voted down the proposed mayor at large measure. I'm simply pointing out to you that that is an option that's available to you. It's still available to you, and you can still do it safe and free from any fear that you're going to receive that infamous $30,000 letter. That's my report, Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Does council have any questions?
Yeah, Neil, one thing, thank you for doing your diligent, bringing up this, what happened, well, the information that's brought to us. I commend you for that. And, I think we're all got a lesson tonight. Yeah, but,
We did.
so,
Those were two of the main reasons that we heard for voting
Yeah,
down
I-
the
I-
mayor at large in the four
I-
districts.
well,
Those were the two
I
main
wish,
reasons I heard.
I wish this was on the board before, to all of us.
So what would we have to do again to reconsider the four districts and the mayor at large? What would that process entail?
You would simply direct me to bring back to you an amended resolution of intention. And I would recommend that you continue the public hearing that is item 1 on your agenda, continue that to October 7th. I would bring back the amended resolution on October 7th. That would be on the agenda preferably prior to the continued public hearing. The continued public hearing, in the event that you adopted that amended resolution, would be one to simply solicit public input as to what your new 4-district map should look like.
Or we can just say, and keep things the same, we'll stick with the rotation, like Jim said, the rotation's fine. He's happy with that, and we can just say, we're gonna stick with the rotation, and
You
Yeah, different
absolutely
amendment.
can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and, you're right.
well, I'm gonna make a motion that we not amend the resolution, and we stick with the rotation and still continue on the process to go to 5 districts.
Well,
That's my motion.
okay, that's your motion. I
Yes,
want to
sir.
make another motion behind that one.
Okay?
I want to, after.
You're making an amended motion?
No,
I know,
yeah,
but
I'm
he's
making a
gotta-
minute, he has to,
What
Can
does
I
he
want to
make
make a
a
motion after
substitute?
this. Let him,
No.
I
I don't even know
want-
if anybody's gonna second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All right, call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
No.
Councilmember Guerra,
No.
Mayor Robertson.
No.
Okay.
Okay, is there another motion?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion. I'll be honest, you guys. I wish I had this. I'm gonna vote. I wish I had this,
Well-
this thing before us before. I'm gonna make a motion to, amend this resolution here and have our, attorney look at this, district at large and, 4 districts and the mayor situation and then bring it back
You
to
already
us.
did.
So is that a motion to bring
Teresa?
back the
Make a
amended
motion.
resolution? I'm sorry, we have a motion. We do not have public comment. We're making
Yeah,
a
I'm gonna make a
motion.
motion on that.
Okay, I'll
To
second that.
amend that to 19 and bring it. That way we look. My motion was to, actually direct the,
To bring back the amended
yeah,
resolution
amendment back,
and to
amendment
continue
resolution,
item 2.
219 or 39, a resolution, for the Selma District, at large district city council, mayor pursuant code 10, whatever, 4 districts at large, and mayor, code section 34886. And to have Neil bring back to us,
Yeah.
and look at it.
Since we have
Okay.
correct information now.
Yeah, more
Okay,
information.
and I'll second that.
Yeah, I wanna take a look.
We call the roll, please?
Okay, but
Actually, we have 2
wait
motions,
a
so
minute,
if
wait a
someone
minute.
wants
Are we
to.
doing,
No, we had
No.
one motion, mine failed.
one
One
motion has
motion.
failed?
And I seconded it, but
Are
did you,
we-
did
no,
someone want to?
no,
I
No,
We're
no,
doing-
the
take a
attorney's
look.
talking with the clerk.
I wanna look at this.
Was there a second of his motion?
Yes, the mayor.
Second.
Before you take the vote, I would ask that you solicit input from the.
Can we
from the public.
solicit input after there's a second, a first and a second?
Yeah,
Doesn't that
I-
open it back
I
up?
understood there was a second.
I seconded Councilman Avalos's motion.
Okay,
bring
and
back
that
the
motion, I
amended resolution.
understand to be directing me to bring back the amended resolution of intention on October 7th, and that will be on the agenda, and to continue this public hearing that is item number 1 on your current agenda. Is that correct?
Is that correct,
No, that's
Councilman?
Is that what you're saying, Jim?
Correct, that's
Okay.
correct.
So with that, is there
But we want,
someone from the
We're looking
public want to
14,
comment?
Yes.
So can we solicit public comment at this point?
Or do we?
You can solicit
Yeah.
public comment if
Since
he's
there's
made the motion and you've seconded, yes,
Yeah.
please.
Can you clarify what he motioned, because he
Yeah.
doesn't know what he did?
He does, yeah, he said whatever you said. So
Jim,
say, Jim,
He
say
said
it.
he did.
yeah, okay, I wanted to, actually amend the resolution of, number 21939, resolution of declaring the City of Selma intention to at-large district, city council mayor pursuant to code, 10-110, 4 districts, and also at the mayor at large pursuant code, section 34886.
Okay.
All
And
right?
to continue, were you looking to continue item?
Yeah, continue item, which is
Item 1 of the
item
public
1,
hearing?
you know, I wanna look at these things,
Okay, and I seconded that.
you know?
So now we'll have public input. Does anybody like to get up and offer their input?
Teresa Salas, 3221 Lee Street. We have a temporary attorney here. Our other attorney was gotten rid of by you guys. You threatened her, she quit because you threatened her. Okay, so now Neil has a completely different interpretation of what she said. I would like to see a third party ask for legal advice. You guys, you voted to get rid of Neil. And now you got him back. And now he's doing what you guys want him to do. I don't think that's fair to the community that has been here for all these public hearings, submitting maps, going with everything that you have brought before us to this point. I would like to know what Neil's record was when he was working for us prior to this. How many litigations did he win for the city, and how many did he lose?
That's not on the agenda.
What was
We're
he
talking-
paid?
We're not, it's not relevant.
That's
What
not
was
on
he
We're
paid?
discussing districting.
What was he paid to litigate for the city? Because if we get sued, he stands to make a lot of money by defending the city. So those are things that I want answered. Earlier this year, you guys voluntarily started the process to change from at-large to districts. Traditional districting principles include respect for communities of interest, geographic, economic, compact contiguous districts, districts that follow major visible features such as rivers or major roads, not small residential one-block streets. That's what you were giving us, and that's what we said we didn't want. And now you're trying to change it up on us again. We want 5 districts, 5 equal districts, the way you brought to us to begin with. With 4 districts, we have a mayor at large, but he lives in somebody else's district. So that means that district gets 2 votes. That's not fair. Economically, I can't run against somebody who can put on a citywide election. That's what we talked about when you voted against a mayor at large, Councilman Avalos.
I'll answer that. No, let me answer that. Yeah, this, public hearing, that's fine, that's true, Teresa, but you know why? I didn't have this information. I do
That
now.
doesn't change.
No, it does change it. It does change.
No, it doesn't. It still means that
it-
I
it-
can't
I'm
run
I'm
an
telling-
election
I'm-
against
e-
one
even-
person.
Okay,
Well, you lost.
hear me out.
Okay. 3
Give it a little more time there, Scott. When you don't, sometimes, I'm gonna tell you something, Teresa, when we don't have all the information in front of us, sometimes we have to take a step back and, analyze it, and, if it's, and evaluate it, we gotta fix it. If we made a mistake, we gotta fix it.
It
And we
isn't
don't
a
have-
mistake.
A lot of times we
It's
didn't
what
have
the
this
councilman
information like we
said.
did now.
We already voted we wanted
But
5
see,
districts.
See, what it is, a lot of times in life, you have to understand, when decisions are made, and if there's information wrongly, how would I say it, addressed or not totally given to us, I should say, not totally given to us. So it takes a little bit different view in life. So when you do get all the facts together, and hey, you have to say, you know what? It's a mistake that not all the facts were there, so we have to kind of fix it.
We elected you to represent us,
And
not
I
your
am
own
representing you.
interests.
It's,
We elected you to, and we're telling you what we want.
oh, I know.
And you're not listening to us. You're
I
not
am
paying
listening to you.
attention to us.
Thank
But
you
you're
for
not
your
listening.
input.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, just let it go.
Anyone else have any input?
Colleen Nelson, 1712 Oak Street. My question's simple. If we decide to go to the 4 districts with mayor at large, and we have to go back and redo some of the mapping, does anybody have an idea of what that extra cost would be? Possibly the young lady that did the maps might know. That's my only question.
City manager.
We don't have a cost yet, but we can get that and have that at the next meeting. We have spent $25,000 so far on this process.
And we were informed, is it minimal? It's not a large cost to go from 5 to 4 districts?
We haven't been given an estimate. Do you want to expand on it, though, Shalice? Our consultant is here and can talk a little bit about that.
There would be certainly extra costs for NDC to attend additional meetings, and it's roughly about $2,000 a meeting to prepare and be here and do the follow-up from the meetings. As far as preparing the 4 maps, we did have a conference call that involved Mr. Costanzo and talking about the timeline. I would have to confirm with Mr. Johnson, who is the president of the company, but it seemed to be my indication that'd be very minimal to draw new maps based on the 4.
When did you have that conversation?
I'm sorry?
When did you have that conference call? Going over the
In
timeline?
preparing for this meeting after it was posted on the agenda.
I
Yesterday?
also was
It was
on
2
that
days
call.
ago. Yeah,
Thank
2
you.
days ago?
And the
Yeah,
city
for
clerk
yesterday.
was also on that call.
yeah.
I just want to know what date it
Thank
was,
you.
that's all.
Okay, thank you. Do we have more public input?
Hello, Joan Nelson, 1058 Mill Street. I don't have a problem with voting for a mayor. I mean, a lot of cities do it. I feel it's a good thing to do. I'm not saying it has to be Scott. It could be Louis, or it could be Jim, or it could be Sarah, or it could be Mr. Trujillo. But I do feel we as citizens have the right to vote for the mayor. I know a lot of cities do it. So that's just my input. So even though she said you're not listening to all of us, I think a little differently, and it's not to take anything away from what she said.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
My name is Joe Mendoza, and I live at 3321 Mulberry. I came to this Selma when I was 12 years old. I'm 73, and I'm still here. I love this city. Before, I live in Valley View. I live in Skelton Street on Jerva. Now I live on this side, 40 years. My question is this. The way it is right now, I can go to any city council if I have a complaint. Now, when we go district, what happens if the city council that I get is not doing his job? Who am I going to go to? That's my question.
Go to the mayor at large.
We actually go to
All right.
all of them, you start with yours, but it doesn't prohibit when you reach out to the other council members.
So I can go to any other council.
You can go, yeah.
The question
The
about
district's
the
not going to
districting
restrict
is
me,
that
just
it-
stay with the council that I'm going to be
No,
put
no,
into.
you can go to him, but if you don't get any results, or if you wish to choose to, you can talk to the mayor or all other council members as well.
Joe, the issue is with districting, everybody just hunkers down and covers their own district, and they don't really have a whole lot of regard for the other districts.
That's
When you-
not true. You're
when
saying you only
that's-
care about your neighborhood?
No, that's a gripe that people have had about the
Yeah.
districting, and having the mayor at large leavens that. It adds somebody who's an advocate for everybody in every district.
Everybody in the city.
Yeah.
We had
everybody in
it
the
before
city.
like that, and,
Yeah.
and it worked before.
Right, thank you. All right.
Good evening. My name is Joe Gonzalez. I live at 2305 Nebraska in the barrio. I was born and raised here. I'm 78 years old. I've seen a lot of changes, and the only thing that I went through this map, I don't see where the barrio on the west side is compatible with the rest of the areas, because some of them are put in so neatly and so squarely. And look at the barrio down there. It looks like somebody took a dump and then just drained it down to the barrio. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. I would like to see it in four different sections, divided equally. Make sure that the map shows, because this map does not show any scale that I could have scaled it to. But I did cut all the areas that don't belong to the barrio, never have belonged to the barrio. I put them all the way up here. And this shows you the difference, the size of the barrio compared to the other areas. There's no comparison. I mean, there's no equalization right there. So divide it in four sections. One thing before I leave, you guys go into your meeting by yourselves. Be civil. You're representing the city. No, you're dividing yourselves up amongst two or three. You know, that doesn't show very good initiative for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maria Bonilla, and I currently live at 3517 Gaynor Street, but I also, I'm a property owner at 2319 Yerba Street in the Barrio. Lived there for 11 years, moved to the other side of town. My kids go to Jackson School. I talked to Jim this week about what's going on, and I agree with Ms. Nelson. I think that would be a good way for us to be able to select our mayor and choose a map and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Humberto Gomez Jr. will always be a proud Salmon. And thank you, Mr. Costanzo, Councilor Costanzo, for putting that input. I did read, I have a 16-page document, and the section that he describes is section 34886. And it says section 34886 provides support for the position that a bi-district system with a large mayor is not susceptible to the California Voter in Writing Act violation, because the section specifically allows the adoption of that election system in furtherance of purposes of the CVRA. Nonetheless, the broad definition of an at-large election system in the CVRA can provide the basis for a prospective plaintiff to challenge a jurisdiction's adoption of an at-large mayor position. The risk of such a challenge is higher if creating an at-large mayor seat would potentially dilute the voting power of a protected class. A jurisdiction's decision to establish an at-large mayor seat would involve it adding a district it otherwise wouldn't have, or eliminating a district that would otherwise have. I have the 16-page document. I know that's I'm not a lawyer, definitely not, but I do go through a lot of regulatory stuff. And what I want for the city of Selma is just to be well represented. Whatever decision the council makes, I will support it, but I'm here to, as always, I learn from this democratic process. Honestly, to have a couple arguments or disagreements, that's civil. I mean, now you throwing punches and disrespecting each other, that's a different thing. But differences of opinion, that's a democratic process. But I was just wondering, Counselor, if that particular, when you stated, because what I don't want is Selma, the citizens of Selma, to pay $30,000. I've had conversations with the mayor of Clovis. Now they're over 100,000. So sometimes that has to go to a ballot measure. I think that says in the law. And actually, this is a 16-page document that is written and provided by I forgot the agency or what she represents, but it's in here. and I'll email it to you guys. It's perfect. But I think it really states it perfectly. I think that what the Councilor Costanzo stated, it does protect the city, but there's still, according to this, now I don't know, would it be still pertinent for, or would you still be liable, or a little bit, not as much, for a potential lawsuit? So that's just my question. But
Humberto, I appreciate you coming up to me at the end of the last meeting and saying, go for it, do the 4 districts and the mayor at large, and say,
Yeah.
as long as you include that declaration that the change in the method of electing the members is being made in furtherance of the CVRA, we're
Right.
safe. And I appreciate that you saying that.
yeah,
So
but
thank you.
but does it really protect the city still? That's what I'm concerned about.
Well,
Mayor.
that's the legal
Okay.
advice that we're
Because
getting.
that's why, if we say it doesn't, I just think that that's not, it still hasn't been cleared. So that's just my concern. But
you.
like I said, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sorry.
Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Oh, no, wait.
Okay, come on up.
Another person. Oh, no, several.
Rose Robertson, 1057 Mill Street. Neil, I think I tried to look at some research. I did some of my research. And on some of it, Huron, I believe it's Huron, Sanger, Parlier, Orange Cove. Am I missing out? Is it Mendota? A few of these cities that are at large and vote their own mayor. Not one of them did I see ever had a lawsuit, even filed. Am I correct? Did I look at the correct?
You're correct. I can speak to Parlier the best.
Yeah.
Parlier used to be 2 cities. And what they did in 1973 is they created 1 city out of 2 cities. It used to be West and East Parlier. And to theoretically unify the council, they selected by ballot measure a mayor at large. And they have 4 districts. But that's a historical thing that's really unique to Parlier. For Huron, for Orange Cove, for Mendota, you have an at-large system for all of the council people, but there's an elected mayor. And the elected mayor serves a 2-year term in all of those cities. All of those cities are above 95% Hispanic. So anybody in their right mind would not even think about serving a letter on Huron, for example, saying that your at-large method of voting is diluting the Hispanic vote. It can't be diluted. It's a minority majority city. So is Selma, but to a lesser extent. Selma is above 70% Hispanic. You heard from NDC that it is impossible to draw a single district that is not majority Hispanic. No one. Typically, these letters are served by one attorney. It's an attorney down in Malibu who makes his living doing this. And he's smart enough to know
Right.
that he cannot validly make the assertion that the Hispanic vote here is being diluted because of the at-large elections, because the Latinos are the majority.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. Any
Good
other
enough,
public
good enough.
input tonight?
Mr. Mayor, if I may just ask a clarifying question?
Okay.
Thank you. Just to summarize, the information we previously had was that under CVRA, if we went to by-district elections of all positions, all seats, it would be the safest harbor. if with this new information, going to 4 districts and a mayor at large, there's a path that has been brought forward with the government code. Just to clarify, we could still receive a letter, but it would be defensible.
It would be absolutely frivolous and unfounded.
And so that lawyer that would bring that lawsuit would be subject to sanctions. Is that correct?
That lawyer would be in hot water.
Okay. Public input.
Joel Fedor, 2021 Hillcrest. So I'll paraphrase. So Neil, you basically came down here and said that we were given false information.
You were given an incorrect opinion,
Incomplete
yes.
information.
Yes.
Okay, that was by NDC. And
No,
I
no,
agree-
no, no. No, it was not by NDC.
Oh, it was not by NDC.
No.
Okay, go ahead. I thought-
Everything NDC said was actually absolutely
Wasn't that
factual.
NDC that said that we had to go 5 districts? Otherwise, we were vulnerable to lawsuit? You watched the videos, right? I mean,
I didn't
don't know.
hear NDC say that. I heard NDC say that he felt, Doug Johnson felt,
Right.
this was an open question because there were lawsuits that he had been involved in,
Okay.
where the court had basically said, we'll see what happens, and didn't reach a decision. What actually happened in those suits
Right.
is they were dismissed. They were dismissed voluntarily because, and that's just by the plaintiff filing a dismissal, because the court, once the case became moot, because of that statute,
Thank you for saying moot, by
the
the way.
court has to dismiss.
Correct. Okay, so it wasn't NDC, they were kind of giving us incomplete information? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think NDC was giving you the information.
They were trying to lead us the
They were
safest
giving you
route.
factual information as to what they knew based upon their involvement in lawsuits.
Gotcha.
I've looked at these lawsuits.
Right.
I can see how they were disposed of. All you gotta do is, you've gotta have the name of the plaintiff, and you've gotta go and find the
So I guess
lawsuit on the court's website.
I guess my question,
But those cases that he was referring to were filed before this statute was enacted.
That's 17, right?
And frankly, they are the reason the statute was enacted. Those cities went to the League of California Cities, as all cities do, and said, get us out of this. We want to have an at-large mayor. And the league listened to them. The league went to the legislature, and they crafted this statute, which
Gotcha.
passed. And that made those lawsuits go away.
Right. The politics aside, I could really care less about that. My concern is, I agree with the gentleman before, where he's worried about us costing us money. Well, we've already tossed 40,000 at NDC, and now we're getting ready to start over again. So basically, it's akin to already having lost the lawsuit
Well,
by spending that money, because she's already said that it's going to be another incurred cost. I
what-
just want that clear.
What she said
Right.
was that every time she shows up for a meeting,
Right.
it's approximately $2,000.
Per meeting.
What she also said is that the other work they do, which is the generation
Right.
of maps, would be very minimal.
Right.
To change maps from 5 districts to 4 districts.
So but we still don't have a quote from her on that number.
We don't have a quote.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, any more public input? Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Avalos?
Aye.
Mayor Robertson?
Aye.
Councilmember Guerra?
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Franco?
No.
Okay, motion passes. We'll bring this back at the October 7th meeting. With that, we'll move on to item 3 tonight on the regular agenda.
Excuse me, going back, now the public has opportunity to draw districts with 4 districts, population base, or
We still need to adopt the resolution on
Just bring it
October
back. Hold on,
7th.
I can't hear. Go ahead.
On October 7th, we will bring the resolution for you with that amendment, and you would have to adopt that to start the new process.
Correct,
But the
and
public
on
will have input and.
Correct, there will be, the public input.
All right. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 3 of the regular agenda, discussion regarding council requests regarding the former city attorney's performance evaluation and termination, even though there was no termination. Report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This was a council request from Mayor Pro Tem Franco to discuss the item that was requested previously for the former city attorney's performance evaluation and termination. So I've put it on the
Yeah,
agenda for that.
yeah. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
So, as we look for our new attorney, because Neil is just temporary, okay, we need to know what transpires that Councilmember Avalos found it necessary to request termination of attorney. Because what to say, what were his concerns, what was his reason for his concerns, and what to make sure it doesn't happen with our next attorney. So you just can't say, oh, I wanted to talk about terminating her, and then say, well, she's not here, so we're not going to talk. She resigned with cause. You don't just do that on a whim. So Jim, what was the reason?
Well, like I told you before, when people are, in our personnel, people with it doesn't matter, working for this, especially at-will employees, attorneys or city managers, they're at-will employees, but we can request evaluation and also termination. So it's just a request, but it takes the council to actually to initiate that as far as termination. But if the individual leaves before the evaluation or discussion has taken place, case closed. And when the case is closed, that's a personnel matter, and we don't discuss personnel matters to the public, because that's like, you don't, that's what it is, and since that individual left on our accordance, case closed, there's no discussion to take place with it, so that's my statement.
Your statement is, you didn't say nothing. Right?
Well, hey, I put on the agenda for us to evaluate her.
Well, you see,
No,
I mean-
I'm just, hey, Franco, you gotta understand, when a person leaves in this situation like this individual did, and as far as case is closed because we can't discuss it no more because that's a personnel matter, and don't discuss personnel
Yeah,
matters.
but what if our actions are creating a hostile work environment for our employees?
Okay.
Right? And if we don't find out what that is, just by being silent and condoning somebody doing it, it makes all of us is guilty if that's the case.
Well,
But I don't know what the case is.
Well, because
you won't say.
well-
Because it looks very orchestrated.
Well,
You
I
guys
mean-
weren't happy with the district thing. All of a sudden, the attorney has to go. Then, thank goodness Mr. Costanza was available to show up. Oh, and guess what? We were all mistaken. We can't have a mayor at large. Oh, and we only need 4 districts. And
Well-
let's move forward. And your statement of, it's fine the way it is, rotation is great. It's
Yeah.
just, all of a sudden that
see,
doesn't matter.
Well, I'm gonna
So-
tell you, hang on,
So
Franco.
that's why we need to know, Jim. So what was your
I mean,
reason?
okay, what are we talking about? The district, or are we talking about the attorney? Which one are we talking
We're
about?
talking about.
You make
keep
one.
it on the agenda
what-
item,
no,
please.
you make.
Give her, what did you do to give her the right to terminate with cause? Not to resign, to leave with, resign with cause.
I put it on the agenda, okay? I put it on the agenda for all of us. And when an individual decides to leave in their own accordance, especially personnel issues, we were going to probably discuss it behind closed session, but if the individual left, case became closed. I don't discuss it no more because, hey, don't need to discuss it no more. That person left on its own accordance.
So
What
if
you have
say-
to ask that individual why she left.
So you're saying it's fair to say if our attorney, whoever that attorney is, gives us legal advice that I personally don't agree with,
Okay.
or I have the opposite view, or that upsets me, we're good, but gives me advice, and then I say, oh, I want a meeting to terminate her contract or his contract. And you're saying that, you don't think that's hostile?
But, hey, this,
You-
anybody can put anything on the agenda as
I
far as
asked you a
valuation. But I'm
Sorry,
just
I
telling.
didn't realize my mic
But
was
I'm gonna
off.
tell- I'm
My
gonna tell-
apologies.
let's-
You
let's
don't
get
think
back-
that was hostile?
No, it's not hostile.
Oh, okay.
It's not hostile.
So
You
if
know,
your supervisor at work.
Hey, hey, listen, have you've been evaluated, right, at work? Am I
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
All right? Hey,
But I never been say, hey, we're gonna come in for your termination meeting.
well, what if they did?
They don't do that because that's harassment, Jim.
No. What if they did? They put it on their possible.
It's not what if.
What
It's
if?
not what they don't
No,
do
no,
that,
hey,
but you did. So what
Well,
did you, why
hey,
was your reason, Jim?
Hey, my reason, unfortunately, that individual left, and the case becomes closed in that manner.
You've asked him this 3 times now.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
asked
you're
me
gonna-
three-
You're creating a hostile workplace
Yeah, yeah, now
for
you-
Councilman
would-
Avalos.
you know,
He
this-
wants-
Well, he
get over
says
this,
that's
You're
fine.
getting the
I
same
want,
answer.
so I want a closed session to terminate Councilman Avalos. I mean,
Go ahead.
you don't get the issue.
It
You got-
takes the
you need a
peers
reason.
appear.
You can request that, but it's
You know,
irrelevant.
That-
Okay,
that
are we
was said in
can we
sarcasm,
get-
folks.
Can
You
we
know?
get back to business here?
Let's take care of business, guys.
Okay, so do you have any more to add?
No, I just said, unless we give a valid reason for those actions, all this, guys, looks very orchestrated. That's all I'm just saying. And it's just not a good light to show the community of Selma.
Well, Franco,
All right.
she left on her own, okay?
That was my last statement. Thank you.
Okay,
I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question. Can I
Okay.
ask?
go ahead. Might as well.
Mr. Costanza, do you represent Malaga?
Yes.
You do?
What agenda item is this referring to?
This refers to the city attorney that was terminated, or, I'm sorry, that.
Number 3 agenda item? Okay.
Jim, have you spoken to anybody in Malaga Water District in the last 2 months? Think about this, Jim.
What's that now?
I'm asking you, have you
Malaga?
spoke to anyone in the Malaga board in the last 2 months?
No, I haven't.
You know,
Nope. I don't know anybody in the Malaga board.
you don't.
Nope.
You have not spoke to anyone that works or represents the Malaga Water District.
No, I haven't.
Okay, that's enough.
Okay, all right, with that, we will, that will be it. I just have one comment to make to council. I can't do it at the next meeting, it'll be too late, but I got a note from the Fresno Fair that Sanger and Selma have the race day on Sunday, October 6th. If anyone would like to go to that race day.
What day?
It's October 6th, it's a Sunday.
Did they say what time?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they want us to RSVP by Wednesday, October 2nd.
What day?
If anybody needs it.
Sunday,
October 6th.
Okay, put me down.
Scott, did they
I'm
say what
always,
time
I'm
the
always
race
there at
starts,
the
like
race.
horse race?
They
Taking a picture
they
of the
didn't.
horse. October
Okay, I
6th.
guess-
Can you resend that again, please, Reina? City Clerk Rivera? Okay. All right, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
We're
to adjourn.
adjourned. Thank
Thank
you
you,
everybody
guys.
for coming out tonight.
Thank you.